Shen Wanyan and I had been promised each other since childhood.
But she never loved me. She was deeply attached to the orphan of a late teacher and took meticulous care of his daily life. I thought I could warm her heart.
But even on my deathbed,
even our daughters urged me to divorce her. They said, Dad, Mom has endured this her whole life. You two have worn each other down for Solon. Why can't you just set her free after IWA's Reborn? This time, I avoided every entanglement with Shen Wanyan one by one. When she said she would not come home for lunch, I packed my things alone and went back to village. When she let sickly Xiu move into my room,
I moved out.
When she decided to stay and take care of me, I went to the Northwest Institute of Heavy Industry. Before I died in my previous life,
even my two daughters urged me to divorce her.
They only wanted her to be free, so she and the teachers often could be together openly. Before I died, my daughter placed a divorce application beside my hospital bed.
The edges of the paper were creased from her grip, as if she had been holding it for a long time. Dad, sign it.
Her voice was very soft,
as if she were afraid to disturb something.
But when those few words fell,
they still weighed so heavily I could hardly breathe.
I struggled to turn my face and looked at Shen Wanyan standing by Thuindao.
She was no longer young.
More than half of her hair had turned white, and fine lines had gathered at the corners of her eyes. But whenever Xiu stood beside her,
the way she looked at him
would still soften without her realizing it.
It was exactly the same as when she was young.
I knew that look all too well. Seeing that I did not move, my daughter bit her lip and kept persuading me.
Mom hasn't had idiocy all these years.
Uncle Xiu is in poor health,
and he can't be left alone.
You two have held each other back for so many years. Now that you're old, you should let her choose once. I wanted to laugh when I heard that. Let her choose once? So in her eyes,
Shen Wanyan had been trapped by me her whole life.
Then what about me? What did I count as?
Was I the person who, at 20, gave up a university in another city for engagement? Was I the one who handed
over every paycheck after marriage, took care of her parents and our children,
and held the whole family together? When Xiu had a fever in the middle of the night, and I was the one who took our feverish daughter to the hospital alone.
She had promised to attend my factor recommendation ceremony with me, but because Xiu said his chest hurt,
she left me waiting outside the auditorium all night.
And afterward, every time she explained,
I only promised my teacher I would take care of him. I was the one who pretended to understand again and again.
I endured it for more than 30 years. I endured it until my daughters grew up
and learned to stand on her side, telling me not to get in the way.
Dad, my daughter pushed the pen into my hand.
There was a trace of reluctance in her tone, but even more of a sense that it was only right. The person Mom truly can't let go of was never you.
Please, just let her have this.
My palm went cold.
I could not even hold the pen. It slipped onto the blanket
with a faint thud.
I looked at Shen Wanyan. She did not come over, nor did she deny it. She just stood there, silent, with heroes lowered.
As if all the hardship in my life, all that, and all the unwillingness were not worth mentioning now. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. So exhausted, I had no strength left to talk. That night,
when my daughter left, she still
did not forget to close the door for her mother. The ward fell quiet.
Outside the window, the rain tapped the glass again and again.
Like someone urging death to come. In the early hours, my chest hurt terribly.
I reached for the call button at the head of the bed. But no matter what, I could not reach before my consciousness faded. Only one thought remained in my mind. If I could live it over, I would never step into this marriage again.
Never.
When I opened my eyes again,
there was no beeping of medical equipment in my ears, and no smell of hospital disinfectant. Instead, there was the sound of an old fan spinning in the teacher's office, hot air pouring through the window, carrying the green scent of sun-baked plane tree leaves. My homeroom teacher, Mr. Lang, sat behind his desk, holding an envelope. He waved their edged envelope at me with a smile. Ichuyi, your admission letter is here. I stood frozen in place.
Mr. Leung thought I was overwhelmed with excitement.
He got up and handed the envelope to me.
Mechanical Manufacturing, Northwest.
Institute of Heavy Industry. That's a good school.
You were usually so quiet.
But you really came through when it mattered.
The paperboard in my palm felt stiff.
Its edge pressed painfully into my fingers. I lowered my head and looked at the wordset. My breathing grew uneven little by little.
Mechanical Manufacturing, Northwest.
Institute of Heavy Industry. This was the same admission letter I had received in my last life.
But back then, the wedding date had already been set. With red eyes, Shen Wanyan begged me to stay.
The Northwest is too far.
Once you leave, you'll be gone for years.
If you go,
what will happen to our marriage? Back then, I believed the engagement mattered more than my future. I thought love was more worth sacrificing for than my dreams, so I tore up the registration form and gave up this paper that could have changed my fate. For many years after that,
I stood in the factory workshop,
hearing broadcasts about major national industrial projects
and seeing young engineers in the newspaper,
standing proudly beside machines.
Late at night,
I would occasionally think back to the year I was 18,
and the admission notice I had torn apart with my own hands. But what was the use of remembering? The road was the one I had chosen.
Once shattered, it could never be pieced back
together until now.
It had returned to my hands. Seeing that I stayed silent, Mr. Leung's smile slowly faded.
What's wrong? Are you so happy you can't speak? I raised my head. My throat felt tight, but I still answered steadily. I'm happy, that's good.
Mr. Leung paused, then seemed to remember something. But does Wanyan know?
Her mother came to school a few days ago
and mentioned that you two would marry in the fall.
If you go so far away, will she be willing to wait?
I gripped the admission letter tightly. Outside the window, the heat shimmered like a stove.
A wave of hot air hit my face.
But my heart had never been clearer.
Whether she was willing or not
was her business. Mr. Leung adjusted his expression. I slowly let out a breath.
I am definitely going to college. When I came out of the office, the sun was blazing.
Students walked across campus in twos and threes holding their books, their faces unable to hide their joy.
Some had been admitted to teachers' colleges, some had been assigned to factories, and some, like me, were about to leave this small town for the first time.
In my previous life, when I stood here, my mind was full of Shen Wanyan.
This time, all I saw was the distance.
After I returned to my place,
the first thing I did
was put the admission letter into an old wooden trunk.
At the very bottom, I pressed it beneath two thick mechanical drawing books.
That wooden trunk had been left by my father.
Its corners were worn white, but it was sturdy. My mother had passed away early. My father had not been able to stay with him for long either. Later, Uncle Shen remembered his old friendship with my father,
and often helped support my studies. After that, the elders of both families brought up an old childhood joke,
and naturally settled the engagement between Shen Wanyan and me. At the time, everyone thought it was the best of both worlds. The Shen family could look after me. I could marry Shen Wanyan, and the two families would be even closer from then on.
I truly had liked her. As a young girl, Shen Wanyan was clean and gentle. She did not talk much, but she always remembered when I had not eaten breakfast
and would place a warm egg on my desk.
I thought it was the beginning of Anifatim. But I never expected
that later, most of her tenderness would be given to another person.
I withdrew my thoughts and turned to look at the calendar on the wall. There were 23 days until college registration.
I took out a red pen and circled the registration date. When the tip of the pen touched
down, my hand was steady.
In 23 days, I would leave. This time, no one could stop me. That evening, I made 3 simple dishes:
stir-fried greens, braised eggplant, and a plate of eggs mixed with chiles. That was the flavor I liked. After I married in my previous life, Shen Wanyan had a weak stomach,
and XIU could not eat strong flavors either. Gradually, chiles disappeared from the dinner table.
I followed them into bland food for decades.
Whenever I wanted even a little spice, I would instinctively ask others first.
Thinking about it now,
it was laughable.
I had even lost the right to my own taste. When the door was pushed open,
I had just brought the last bowl of soup to the table. Shen Wanyan walked in front, wearing a light blue shirt,
with a cloth bag over her shoulder.
Xiu followed behind her. Xiu was 1 year younger than us. He was delicate and thin,
with a constant trace of illness between his brows. When he stood there quietly, people would instinctively feel he needed care.
Precisely because of this,
in my previous life, Shen Wanyan worried about everything for him.
His father had been Shen Wanyan's high school teacher.
When her family was at its hardest time,
that teacher had paid her tuition for her
and encouraged her to keep taking the college entrance exam.
Later, the teacher died of illness.
Before he passed, he entrusted his own lesson to the Shen family,
hoping they would look after him a little. From then on, Xiu became the heaviest responsibility
on Shen Wanyan's shoulders.
At first, I also respected that teacher. When Xiu had just come to the counter town,
I even offered up my own bed. Later, I slowly realized
that the way Shen Wanyan cared for him
had long since gone beyond ordinary concern. She would remember that Xiu did not eat scallions, but forget that I hated cilantro most. She would run through the rain late at night to keep Xiu company because he was afraid of thunder.
They'd tell me to go to the clinic by myself when I had a high fever. She would give away the movie tickets she had promised to use with me to Xiu just because he was in a bad mood. Every time I hesitated even slightly,
she would look
at me with an almost disappointed expression,
as if refusing to give. It meant I was not kind enough. Chu Yi, you just came back from the hospital today. I brought him over to have something warm to eat.
Shen Wanyan put down her bag.
When her eyes fell on the eggs mixed with chilies on the table, her brows furrowed slightly. His stomach hasn't been well lately.
Why did you make it so spicy?
I glanced at that dish.
My tone was calm. I made it for myself. Shen Wanyan seemed not to expect that answer. She froze for a moment. Xiu quickly gave an embarrassed little smile. It's all right, I'll just eat a little. Sister Wanyan, don't let me ruin Brother Chui's mood.
Sure enough, Shen Wanyan's expression softened.
She pulled out a chair and let Xiu sit. Your stomach isn't good to begin with. Don't force yourself, then. She reached out and moved the eggs mixed with chilies to the spot farthest from Xiu.
Then she served him the first bowl of soup.
I had made the soup. I had fried the eggs too. But from beginning to end,
she did not even look to see whether I had sat down.
I stood beside the table holding my bowl for a while. Xiu was sitting in the seat where I usually sat.
In my previous life, this scene had happened countless times.
He sat in my seat,
used my cup,
wore the new jacket I had bought before Yevon had the chance to put it on, and later on even took over the corner of my desk by the window.
Every time, Shen Wanyan would brush it off with, he's not an outsider. Back then, I cared about her too much.
Even when I felt uncomfortable, I forced myself to be magnanimous.
Now, looking at it again, I only felt tired.
I did not argue. I turned, took another bowl, and went to the kitchen for rice. The conversation at the dinner table continued. Shen Wanyan asked Xiu about his checkup that day. Xiu answered softly that the doctor told him to worry less and rest more.
She immediately picked up the topic, saying she would help him complete their school paperwork over the next few days. No one asked where I had gone today. No one asked whether I had anything I wanted to say.
It was not until I finished eating
and put down my chopsticks to clear my bowl that Shen Wanyan finally looked up. Why are you so quiet today? I wiped the corner of my mouth.
My tone was flat.
There's nothing to say.
She seemed unsatisfied with that answer.
Are you unhappy because are you?
Came, Xiu immediately lowered his eyes.
His hands slowly tightened around his chopsticks.
Watching this scene, a ridiculous sense of familiarity suddenly arose in my heart.
In my previous life, every time she threw the problem to me,
Xiu would fall quiet like this.
So if I admitted I was unhappy,
it would be as if I were bullying an innocent person. I laughed softly.
Whether I'm happy or
not won't affect your meal. The table fell silent.
At once,
Shen Wanyan's frown deepened. Chu Yi, you weren't like this before. Before, I would give up what I liked her yet.
I would swallow down my discomfort.
When she did not value me, I would find excuses for her. But that version of me had already died.
I picked up my bowl and walked toward the kitchen.
I did not answer. When I came out after washing the dishes, XIU had already been sent back by Shinwanyan. On the table, there was one empty bowl, and that plate of eggs mixed with chiles, barely touched.
I sat down and slowly finished the cold dish.
Then I crossed one day of the calendar.
22 days left. Early the next morning.
Shinwanyan left early.
Before leaving, she paused at the door for a moment.
As if she wanted to mention what happened last night, but in the end, she only left one sentence. I won't be back for lunch.
You needs to handle some documents.
After the door closed, the room became completely quiet.
I dragged the cloth bag out from under the bed and took out everything I had prepared for the wedding. One item at a time.
There was a rosewood pen holder I had polished by hand, a pair of enamel teacups,
printed with twin lotus flowers,
which I had saved ration coupons for 3 months to buy. There was also a piece of dark grey cloth, originally meant to be made into a new junction suit for the wedding.
In my previous life, I treasured the seedings greatly,
because I thought they represented a home. But later, I finally understood, if someone never puts you first, no matter how much you prepare, it is only a one-man show.
I packed the things up and took them to the end of the street. The owner of the second-hand shop looked them over and quoted a price that was neither high nor low.
I did not bargain
when the money was in my hand.
I only felt that some heavy corner in my heart
had suddenly loosened a little.
That afternoon,
I went to the recycling station again and sold 2 boxes of old magazines
and high school review materials I no longer needed.
I had memorized those books by heart. Their corners were filled with my notes. But from now on, I was going to a much further place. I could not take too much with me. When I returned home,
the sky was already turning dark.
I marked another stroke on the calendar. 21 days left.
After dinner, I packed a few changes of clothes,
preparing to return to my hometown the next day. The engagement had been arranged by the elders. If I was going to cancel it, I should explain it face to face. I did not want to be like my previous life.
Push forward in confusion.
The next day, just as I was about to leave,
Shinwanyan happened to come back, seeing me carrying a bundle. Her expression shifted slightly.
Going back to the village?
Millimeters, why so suddenly?
There are some things I need to handle.
She took 2 steps closer, seeming to want to ask more,
but was interrupted by a hurried knock at the door.
XIU stood at the doorway,
his face pale, holding a form damp with sweat.
Sister Wanyan,
the school needs an additional family certificate.
I don't know how to write it. Shinwanyan immediately turned and took the paper. Her eyes focused entirely on those lines.
Don't
worry,
I'll go with you. I stood by the door and watched her. She did not even ask one more question about when I would return. In my previous life, I had been disappointed by things like this too many times.
But in this life,
there was only calm left in my heart.
That was fine. It saved me from explaining. The long-distance bus back to the village swayed along the road.
Outside the window, the fields were a lush green.
I leaned against the window
and remembered myself returning home in my previous life. Back then, I had gone back full of joy with my fiancée. The elders all praised my good fortune,
saying I could marry a girl like Shinwanyan. And I truly believed
that life would only get better from then on. But that marriage
later became like an endless river,
dragging me bit by bit into the depths.
I would not jump in again.
By the time I reached the village entrance,
the sun was already leaning toward the west.
Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen were sitting in the yard picking vegetables.
They were both a little surprised to see me back.
Julie, why did you come back alone? Where is Wanyan?
I put my bag at my feet.
After a few seconds of silence, I finally
spoke.
Uncle, auntie?
I want to cancel the engagement. The wind in the yard seemed to stop for an instant. The string beans in Aunt Shen's hands dropped back into the bamboo basket.
Uncle Shen also could not answer.
For a long time.
Child, why are you suddenly saying this? I kept the matter very simple. I only said that I had been admitted to a university far away, that I wanted to study first, and did not want the engagement to delay either of us. Uncle Shen sighed.
Studying is a good thing. The wedding is not something that cannot wait.
Wanyan is soft-hearted.
And Xiu was left behind by her teacher. If she takes care of him a little more, that only shows loyalty and gratitude.
Sure enough, even the elders knew.
It was just that everyone assumed I shouldn't understand. I lowered my head
And looked at the tree shadows moving into the yard.
I know she values loyalty and gratitude, precisely because I know I don't want to make things hard for her.
Aunt Shen grew anxious.
If she did something wrong, tell us.
We'll talk to her. We'll talk to her.
Cancelling an engagement is no small matter.
How can you decide so easily?
I looked at them. They had truly treated well.
I remembered their kindness.
And precisely because I remembered it, I did not want to make my words too harsh. Auntie, I have thought this through clearly. This marriage is no longer suitable. The silence lasted for a long time.
Evening smoke rose from the roofs of every house.
From far away came the faint sound of children playing. The light in the yard dimmed little by little. In the end, Uncle Shen let out a heavy sigh. Since your mind is made up, we won't stop you. He got up and went inside. After a while, he brought out a copper button wrapped in red cloth. It was the token exchanged when the engagement was set years ago. I also took from my bag the old silver ring the Shen family had given me.
The two small objects sat facing each other on the table, like a bond that had never truly begun. Now gently returned.
Aunt Shen's eyes reddened.
Does Wanyan know?
Not yet. Why?
Didn't you talk to her first?
I was silent for a moment. I will find a chance to explain.
Uncle Shen looked at me for a long time,
as if he had seen something on my face.
He did not try to persuade me again.
He
only said slowly. Then tell her yourself.
For now, we won't spread this. Thank you, Uncle. That night, I slept in the old house. A bit of dust occasionally fell from the roof.
Outside the mosquito net, insects chirped one after another.
But I slept very deeply. When I woke the next day,
I actually felt a long-lost lightness. It was as if the stone pressing on my chest for decades had finally been shifted open by a crack.
When I was leaving,
Aunt Shen secretly stuffed a cloth pouch into my bag. I could not refuse it. Only after the bus had driven away did I discover that it was filled with a neat stack of bills and several grain coupons. On top of the pouch was a piece of paper. The handwriting was not beautiful, but it was very earnest.
Studying is serious business. From now on, whether the marriage happens or not,
Auntie hopes you will make something of yourself.
I leaned against the bus window.
My nose suddenly stuck.
In my previous life,
I had tied the Shin family's kindness to Toshin Wanyan herself. I thought not marrying her would mean betraying them. Only after living again did I understand
that true gratitude
never means paying with your entire life.
When I returned to the city, half a month had passed. Standing in front of the calendar,
I crossed off 15 red marks in one breath.
6 days left. In 6 days, I would leave this place. I had just put down the pen when the sound of the door lock turning came from outside. Shen Wanyan pushed open the door and entered, with Xiu following behind her. Xiu held bedding in his arms
and carried a small suitcase in his other hand. My eyes fell on them. I already had a feeling in my heart, but Shen Wanyan seemed not to notice anything wrong.
Her tone was natural. You're back.
Perfect timing. The roof of our used dorm is leaking. Repairs will take a few more days. I told him to stay here for now.
I did not move. Where will he stay? She paused for a moment, then glanced toward my room.
Your room faces south.
It's well ventilated, and he has been cooling lately. Let him stay there for a few nights.
You can sleep on the folding bed outside for now.
Xiu immediately looked apologetic. Brother Chu Yi, sorry to trouble you.
Once the dorm is fixed,
I'll move back right away. I did not look at him.
I only looked at Shen Wanyan. Where are my things?
I packed them up for you.
She walked to the wall and pointed at 2 cardboard boxes.
The books I had used for years.
My changes of clothes.
And the fountain pen box my father left.
Me were all packed in them. Stacked in the corner of the living room. On top were the old notes I had not yet organized. Their corners folded and wrinkled. In my previous life, I had seen the same scene.
That time, I had only been gone for 3 days. When I came back,
The bed belonged to Xiaoyu. And the desk belonged to Xiu too. I asked Shen Wanyan why she had not told me beforehand.
She only replied lightly.
You are not an outsider.
It's just a temporary move. Later, that sentence became her universal excuse for hurting me. Not an outsider.
So your room could be given up.
Your time
Could be given up.
Your dignity could also be given up. I moved the 2 boxes to the table
And checked the things inside one by one.
Shen Wanyan seemed to notice my mood. Her tone softened. It's only
For a few days. Once you and I get married.
This will be our home anyway.
There is no need to draw such clear lines.
When I heard the words get married,
my fingers paused almost imperceptibly.
She still did not know. That was fine. In 6 more days, everything would be over. Got it, I answered with only 3 words. That night, I slept on the narrow folding bed in the living room.
Xiu's calves came from
my former room. Every little while, Shen Wanyan would go in to check on him,
bringing water and carefully closing the window for him.
I turned my back to the bedroom door,
looking at a corner of the wall lit by moonlight.
Many years later in my previous life,
I had also once turned my back to the bedroom door like this, listening as Shen Wanyan went out at night to care for Xiu.
I did not stop her. It was not that I was not hurt. I was afraid that if I stopped her, I would look unreasonable. But a marriage that relies on one person constantly sacrificing their dignity to maintain it will rot sooner or later.
The next morning,
I prepared to book a room at a hotel.
With only a few days left before leaving, it was better to move out early and avoid more trouble.
I had just put on my jacket when Xiu walked out of the room. His complexion looked much better
than last night when he saw me.
He seemed to suddenly remember something.
He turned back into the room and took out a book.
Brother Chuyi, this is your mechanical writing book. I saw it last night and thought it was interesting.
So I borrowed it and flipped through it.
I took it from him
and found several creases between the pages. The pencil notes in the margins had been pressed and smudged. I raised
my eyes and looked at Xiu.
He still wore that harmless look, as if nothing was wrong. You don't mind, do you? I closed the book.
Next time you borrow something, get my permission first. His expression stiffened. I was only looking.
Then you should still ask first.
The living room fell briefly silent. Shen Wanyan was just coming out with something in her hands
and happened to hear the last sentence. Her brows knitted lightly.
Chuyi, it's just a book. Why be so serious?
I slowly turned around.
Because it's mine. She probably never expected me to be this direct.